soil, a living soil, a soil which has to be living, needs a lot of nutrients to be put into the soil. And one of the most important material which goes into the soil is organic matter. So when you talk about organic matter, it can be a liquid, it can be a solid, but mostly we relate a fertilizer to a solid. And we all know that cattle heads, that's animal heads, which we can call it as a cow, bull, sheep, etc., were always associated with farming, especially in Asian countries, especially in India. The day we moved our animal heads from agriculture, we started facing our own problems. Because animals by nature produce a lot of copious amounts of urine and dung. And dung is one of the main sources of organic matter for the soil. At the same time, urine is a very important material which could be cow's urine, which can be used as a pest repellent. At the same time, can also be mixed with water, and it promotes a lot of micronutrients as well as essential organic organisms which can also enter into the soil. Now this beautiful soil, if we have to prepare artificially a material, we can produce compost. Compost, that's how it is called as. Manure or compost. Now this compost usually can be of two ways. One is aerobic, the other is anaerobic. Now what's the difference? I told you, biotic is living, A is an abbreviation for absence. So biotic, abiotic. Whereas here we tell aerobic in the presence of air, anaerobic in the absence of air. Any doubts? Why is it abiotic and here anaerobic? It can also be aerobic, but my English language does not permit me to use an article a when the word starts with a vowel. So I call it as anaerobic. Now this anaerobic compost, nothing new. In those days, every household in rural areas, they will make a pit, they will put all the biomass into it, and once it is full, they may add a little bit of cow dung into it, close it. So once you close, it gradually becomes into manure. This is an anaerobic process where air does not go inside. But at the same time, there are certain gases that could be produced, the compost will be finally produced. In aerobic composting, air goes inside. So to prepare a compost, what I would require is leaf, biomass, cow dung, etc. And remember always, leaves when they are green in color, have more amount of nitrogen in it. And the more they dry and they become a litter, there's more carbon in it. Usually the natural material which is available, you need not worry about it at all, because natural material has a balanced carbon-nitrogen ratio. What is carbon-nitrogen ratio? How much of carbon for how much of nitrogen? If there are 30 parts of carbon to 1 part of nitrogen, that is 30:1, is the maximum ideal composition to prepare a compost. Sometimes it can happen that you have a coconut farm and you have a lot of coconut fiber with you. This coconut fiber has too much of lignin in it, and lignin is carbon. So I must increase my nitrogen, otherwise it will not get composted. On the other hand, I have a poultry farm, I am doing poultry management, fish management, and I have a lot of fish waste, poultry waste. There's too much of nitrogen in it, less amount of carbon. If I don't balance it properly, then what will happen? I'll get a smell of ammonia. So balancing this is the first step of composting. But if you are going to handle agro waste, usually nature has taken care of it. So in aerobic compost, you can just set it up as such, or you can have tanks, you can have holes in the tanks and do aerobic composting. Or if you are running an industry and if you want to do something different, you can produce biogas by anaerobic composting. Anaerobic process encourages a lot of methanogenic bacteria which produce methane, and methane is a combustible gas. So methane is used as biogas, and the slurry which comes out, that is after it is being used, the slurry, the waste which will come out, can also be composted. The third most important is Vermitech. Now what is Vermitech? What is Vermitech? Come on, guess. We always talk about vermiculture, vermicompost, vermicast. Let us be very clear about this. Now, if I take the term Vermitech, vermi is derived from the term vermis. Vermis is worms. Tech is technology. So, Vermitech is a word used to describe any technology using worms, and worms here are earthworms. Now, when you use earthworms, earthworms will produce two components. People sometimes call it as vermicast and some call it as vermicompost. What is the difference between vermicast, vermicompost? These two are same, worm. One is cast, one is compost. Now that's the earthworm. For example, that's the earthworm. This earthworm keeps eating the organic matter from here and sends out its waste over here. If you take only this component, this is cast. So what did you have for lunch? What did you have for lunch? Normally what we say, I had rice for lunch, I had chapati for lunch, but we never tell what we had our rice with. We don't say we had rice with dal or with sambar or with rasam or with curry. We don't say we had chapati with potato curry, with paneer curry. We don't describe it. We tell what is the most important component, and the most major component is rice or chapati. In the same way, when I prepare a compost, it's a huge quantity. There are millipedes, microarthropods, microorganisms, lots of organisms all operating together. But who is visible? Our earthworm is visible. So because that is the major component, we call it as vermicompost. Fine. Now I want to do vermicompost. I want to know about earthworms. How do I know about earthworms? Have a look at the picture. In the earthworms, normally you will find that just as the worm is there, in the front portion you find a ring-like structure. This ring-like structure is called as the clitellum. What is it? Clitellum. How do you spell it? C-L-I-T-E-L-L-U-M. What does it signify? Maturity of the worm. Once the worm matures, it gathers the clitellum. That means it is ready for production of next generation of organisms. It is ready for growth. It is ready for reproduction. That's what it means. So this is what is a clitellum. ठीक है, that is clitellum. But which earthworms can I use? That's a very good question. Which earthworms can I use? There are almost 3,500 species of earthworms in the world. India has more than 500 species. We should be proud of it, right? We should be proud that India has more than 500 species. Now, can I remember 500 species? Impossible. It's not possible to remember the names of them. We, like something like your teacher forgets your names inside the classroom. The same way, like we can't remember all the names, but we always know who is the mischief maker in the class and who is the first student in the class. That is rememberable, right? In the same way, we can also remember our worms. How? By what type of work they do and where they live. We are on our way to some place, right? On a picnic. We are all going in the bus. And we stop on the way at a hotel so that we can have a refreshment. We rush into the hotel, and bad habit is the hotel may be full, somebody may be eating, there is no place, so we go and stand behind him. When will you get up? I have to sit over there. Is it? Fine. Now, the moment we sit over there, the table is dirty. So who comes? First one person comes and then cleans the table. Clear? Then the second person comes. The second person comes and says, "Sir, what would you like to eat?" And supposing I tell him, "I would like to have a dosa." Does he prepare the dosa? No, no. Who prepares the dosa? Yes, you rightly said. There's a cook who prepares the dosa. So first person cleans the table. The second person comes and says, what I want to eat. I tell dosa. And he tells, master, one dosa. Master makes the dosa. Again, he brings it back. So three people are involved. To clean the table, to move up and down, and to prepare the dish. Same way, let us come into earthworms. Now, as we see in the picture, the first group of worms are on the top. The first group of worms, for example, are those which live on the surface of the soil, as you find in the picture, and they are called as epigeic earthworms. Confusing? No, simple. Jake is derived from the word geo. Geo, geography, geology. So geo means earth. Epi means above. Those which live above the surface of the earth, they are called as epigeic worms. The second group of worms are the anaerobic. Anaerobic means intermediate. And the third group is endogeic. As I told, earth, endo means inside. Clear? One inside the earth, one top of the earth, one in between. You guessed it right. The endogeic cleans the table, prepares the soil. The anaerobic keeps moving up and down. The waiter. Epigeic, the chef who prepares the food. As we see in the picture now, you will find the epigeic, the anaerobic, and the endogeics. So you find earthworms on the top which start preparing the food. The middle worms keep moving up and down. So they create channels, they make the food available for the roots, and then you have the bottom worms who loosen the soil, who create the soil. They all work as a team, and a healthy soil has all the three types of worms. There are some worms which act between them also. It is not a very strict classification, but generally based on ecological strategies. If you look at our own worms, Indian worms, as far as South India is concerned, we have beautiful worms. On the surface epigeic, we have Perionyx excavators. At the anaerobic, we have Lampito mauritii. The endogeic, we have Octocatona thurstoni. You can just have a look at them. Every place has a different set of worms. Every continent has a different set of worms. So don't worry about knowing the names. But I must talk to you about one very special earthworm, the Octocatona cerreta. You are seeing it in the picture. This Octocatona cerreta is a beautiful worm. What do you mean by beautiful? That is nature. See, sometimes some soils, they may be acidic. You know acid base, right? We all know. For example, you know pH. The pH of the soil may be acidic or may be alkaline or may be neutral. So sometimes you find this acidic soil, and usually red soils or slightly mixed of red soils will be slightly acidic in color. This is where you will find this particular very interesting organism, Octocatona cerreta. You know, it's something beautiful. This earthworm, on the sides of its front end, you will find two beautiful white structures, and we call them as calciferous glands. You know, sometimes when we get acidity, we pop in a tablet. What do you call it as? Sometimes acidity, you know, like you find a heartburn, people buy a tablet, put it in the mouth. Antacid tablets. In the same way, this organism is blessed with calciferous glands which produce calcium carbonate. So when this worm takes the acid soil, it is acidic. The calciferous glands produce calcium carbonate and mix with the soil. Now this soil, as it passes through the body, becomes neutral, and the casting which comes out is almost neutral and encourages the plants to grow. That is nature. That is the reason why every soil system, every ecosystem have their own set of organisms, and we call them as ecotypes. It's always better to have our own worms in our own soils. Those who feel that no, I don't have enough worms, but I would like to prepare some compost, they can use Perionyx excavatus. They can use Icenia fetida. Icenia fetida normally is good for North India or where the temperatures are too low. But when the temperatures are high and more efficient, especially down south, people prefer Eudralus eugenie. You are able to see all the three species on the picture now. You have seen Perionyx excavatus, you have seen Icenia fetida, and you have seen Eudralus eugenie. Now the question comes, sir, how many males and how many female earthworms should I use? Interesting, very interesting, very interesting. One thing you must remember is, in earthworms, there is no separate male, separate female. Every earthworm has both male and female. So don't worry about asking how many male earthworms you must have, how many female earthworms you must have. Even if you have 2 or 3 earthworms, and if you know how to culture them, they can multiply themselves and they can produce a huge number. One thing you must remember is, even though they have male and female in them, they usually do not mate themselves. They require a partner. So supposing this is one earthworm A, this is one earthworm. This earthworm A, this is the mouth, this is the back end, the rear end, anus. So mouth, anus. This is another earthworm, mouth, anus. And for your information, if this is the clitellum, and this is the clitellum for this worm. Is it clear? So this is one mature worm, this is one mature worm. These worms come and lie side by side like this. And then they mate, as you see in the picture now. They will mate and they exchange their male gametes. They exchange only their male gametes. They don't directly fertilize. They exchange. That is, if this is A and this is B, the A receives the sperms from B and the B receives the sperms from A, and then they separate. Now much later, what happens? The clitellum. This secretes a membrane on the top. This is the clitellum here. Yeah, this is the clitellum here. This secretes a membrane on the top. And it lays the eggs inside. Eggs are not fertilized. Eggs inside. The ovum, not the eggs, the ovum. The female gamete is laid inside. And then it slowly wriggles out. When it comes in the front, the sperms from B are released into it. The sperms from B, which was collected by them, are released into it. And then this outer layer slowly comes out. And this becomes a cocoon. Is that clear? The secretion of the clitellum becomes a cocoon. And now you can see cocoons, different types of cocoons for different species. Usually the ones on the surface, epigeic worms, have smaller cocoons. The endogeic worms have bigger cocoons. And from this cocoon, young one slowly comes out. The young ones will get hatched and they come out. What is the life cycle of a worm? Our local worms, or even the worms which are used for composting, usually live for 1 year. So don't worry about the life cycle. The cocoon hatches and a juvenile worm will come out. This juvenile slowly grows up, and as it matures, it develops a clitellum. Once the clitellum comes, we call it as the clitellate worm. The clitellate worms mate with each other, produce. You have a doubt? Yes, I got your point. How many cocoons can be produced by one worm? Yeah, it depends. Usually these composting worms, that are epigeic worms, in each season or session can produce about 10 to 15 cocoons. And from each cocoon, they can produce from 1 to 5 worms. And if you keep multiplying one worm, its children, its children, its children, its children, you know, one worm in 1 year can produce about 1,000 worms. So don't worry that you have to buy worms every time. You can culture them, you can retain them. Each life cycle is almost similar. And vermicomposting is very, 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 very simple. You want to try vermicomposting? Start with it. What do you want for vermicomposting? Is the cow dung cake. You know cow dung cake? We call it as varatti, upli, upla, all these names. That is the cow dung which is being dried up. Right? Now this varatti, yes, farmers used to sell it. Now it is also available online. That is the fun of it today. Right, fine. Now if you have pre-digested material which is already composted dung or cold dung, you can just leave the worms into it. In a few days you find lots of worms multiplying and compost being produced. That is vermicompost. And vermicompost is very good. Now we will see how to prepare vermicompost.